There comes a time in the history of nations when fear and complacency allow power to accumulate and liberty and privacy to suffer. That time is now, and I will not let the Patriot Act, the most unpatriotic of acts, go unchallenged.
There you go. Senator Rand Paul did not let it go unchallenged, speaking for over 10 hours yesterday afternoon and into the evening. He finally ended his faux filibuster, wasn't a real filibuster, on the Patriot Act just before midnight, and that was probably a strategic move.
You think?
Yep, great place to start our roundtable. Let's bring in Ford O'Connell, Republican strategist and chairman of the CivicForumPAC, and also Chelsi Henry, a political strategist as well. It's great to have you both with us. All right.
Thank you for having us.
All right, Ford, let's start with you. Rand Paul, we heard Peter King blasting Rand Paul's move. Was this more about his presidential run than actually a principled stand on the Patriot Act?
Well, while he does have a principled stand on the Patriot Act, this is basically all about campaign strategy. He needs to shore up his base with his libertarian voters who think he's gone mainstream. And at the same time, he needs headlines because since he's come out, he's been mired in the middle of the pack in the polls, and he needs to find a way to gain the spotlight.
Chelsi, do you think it worked?
I think it did. In terms of this being a campaign ploy, I'm not sure about that. But I think what's most important is that he brought public awareness to the Patriot Act. He brought public awareness to the fact that we as Americans do need to be paying attention to what's going on, how those in power are using their powers, and what privacy do we have? What is the Fourth Amendment? How is it still being applied to our everyday lives? And so I think the move that he did, bringing public awareness, was a very good move for him and for what he stands for.
Well, I'd agree with you kind of halfway, Chelsi, on that aspect. But the House has already passed this Freedom Act, which I think a lot of Americans would be okay with as an alternative to the Patriot Act. And Rand Paul was sending out tweets last night, stand with Rand, text filibuster to a certain number to help generate support. So you don't think this was kind of a patently, this is about 2016 for Rand Paul, because what do you think he's actually going to be able to accomplish by this filibuster?
What he was able to accomplish was public awareness. So you mentioned the tweets and different things that he did. Okay, to your point, is this going to help his presidential campaign? Absolutely. But at the same time, in terms of his stances for civil liberties and what he stands for, that has remained the same. And so that's why I commend the senator on bringing, again, the public awareness.
I totally disagree with you, Chelsi. Yes, he's always had a principled stand on the Patriot Act, but the timing of this is a little coincidental, okay? And he's also an announced candidate. And John Bachman's absolutely right. You have to realize his supporters were out on social media trolling Hillary Clinton and Ted Cruz, who's a potential 2016 rival. This was more about Rand Paul in 2016 than it was the Patriot Act.
All right, Chelsi, go ahead and follow up.
Even if he was not running for president, I mean, why, as an elected official, as a United States senator in the most elite club in the country, why would you not use social media to your advantage? So I just don't see that as a point in the conversation. Of course they're going to use it. Of course he's an announced candidate, so he is going to use it to his advantage. But I, again, believe that this still had a principle base, and so that is what I'm commending him on. However he and his campaign used it, smart on their behalf. But what I'm more focused on and what I care about most is the principle in which he stood on, and I will stand by that.
All right, well, that was a good debate. We want to move on a little bit. On a side note, New Yorkers have also joined in to protest the Patriot Act. There is no shortage of concern about this act, but also the House, again, has passed this Freedom Act, so it's up to the Senate. And again, we want to clarify, this was not a filibuster last night because they were not supposed to be debating the Patriot Act itself. They actually just pushed off this vote that just happened on the president's fast track for trade. We could go on. I also want to play real quickly where we're going next here with this soundbite. A group called We Are Always Listening planted recording devices underneath a restaurant table labeled property of the NSA. We talked about sort of the efforts that have been made to troll this debate a little bit. And this, to me, Chelsi, seems like another one of those issues because you have a very serious topic here, but folks may be taking it a little bit too far to get their message across. Chelsi, that was for you.
Oh. Yes, I thought you were going to play the video.
I thought we were too.
We thought we were too, so don't worry.
Okay, well, good. Well, listen, at the end of the day, when I heard about it and I read it in The Wire, it's an issue. And so are they taking it too far? that can be argued. I think, again, when we look at what's taking place, this is an opportunity for Americans to realize that when you are in a public setting, anything's open for grabs. Whatever you say, whether they're doing it legally or illegally, it's up for grabs, and to be cautious. And it just made me think again about the different conversations I have about what I say in public. And I think that's the important part. When we try to take this too far political to the left or to the right, I think we do a disservice to Americans about how does this actually apply to their lives. And I think that we have to get back to the basics of that, of how all these different issues, no matter if it's a conservative issue, a liberal issue, how does this affect everyday Americans like you and I and what we believe in.
We're going to talk about everyday Americans.
But Chelsea, they are significantly
run.
violating the law. And they're not even explaining what the Patriot Act is and how the Patriot Act applies. They're not even, this isn't even the Patriot Act, what they're doing. It's not even the same thing what the NSA does.
That's the hook for it. We'll be right back. You can wrap that up when we come right back. And we welcome you back. We're going to take you right now to Washington, D.C. Metro Police Chief Kathy Lanier now taking questions, talking about the suspect Darren Dillon Wendt, wanted for the murders of a family in Washington, D.C. at their $1 million home. Let's take a listen.
The ironworks business, yes.
Did he work for American Ironworks at one time?
We have recent information that he did work at American Ironworks at one time in the past.
Did he leave, was he fired from American Ironworks?
I don't have that information, Pat.
Did he have, okay.
Do you believe that Mr. Wendt is the person of interest?
All right, there are questions coming from the local media there asking Police Chief Kathy Lanier about the ongoing search for the suspect in this murder, Darren Dillon Wendt. She is saying that they believe right now he is in Brooklyn, New York. She has been in contact, their police department has been in contact with New York City Police Commissioner Bill Bratton, trying to find him. The suspect is described as a black male, 5'7", 155 pounds, again believed to be in the Washington, D.C. area. Yes, all after that murder in Washington, D.C., a quadruple homicide at a house not far from where the vice president lives.
A couple, 10-year-old boy and their housekeeper. And this is so interesting. It's almost like the CSI, forensic evidence, because it was pizza crust that is leading.
DNA evidence on the pizza crust that led to the suspect here. We'll continue to keep an eye on that story and bring it to you as soon as we have more information. Meantime, let's check back in for part 2 of our roundtable discussion. And back with us, Chelsi Henry and Ford O'Connell. And Ford, we were talking about the Patriot Act and the rights of everyday Americans. And I know you wanted to follow up to what Chelsi was saying about
that commercial got in the way.
Our need to be vigilant.
Well, the anti-NSA guys, the pranksters in New York City, are not doing what the Patriot Act is in contention with right now. The biggest thing is Section 215, which says that the government can bulk collect phone records. Okay, that is what everyone is debating, not whether or not you can listen, because you still have to get a FISA court warrant. And what's happening is here, people are bastardizing this debate and not understanding the balance between civil liberties and national security. I think the Patriot Act needs to be amended. I'm not sure the U.S. Freedom Act is the way to go, because what's going to happen is basically the terrorists are going to be able to switch cell phones too easily before the government can catch up.
So what you said, you don't think that's the way to go. What do you suggest?
What I suggest is a temporary reinstatement of the Patriot Act for about 3 to 4 more months, and have Congress sit down with the NSA and figure out exactly what is the best way to protect civil liberties with a balance of making sure that you have the speed and agility and nimbleness to actually catch terrorists. And that's the real deal. And that's what the American voter wants. Balance civil liberties with being able to actually protect the nation from terrorism.
And as I mentioned yesterday...
I completely agree.
Okay.
Completely agree.
All right, we'll end there. And as I mentioned yesterday, we can all act surprised when Congress comes up with some short stopgap measure to solve a potential crisis that's on the horizon. Let's move on.
Let's move on, shall we? Let's talk about presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. I know you guys are both huge fans. She spoke in Iowa, as did some Iowa Democrats. Let's listen to what they had to say.
What did she accomplish that you consider significant as Secretary of State?
Secretary of State? I really can't name anything off the top of my head.
Okay, Christina, can you think of something that she accomplished as Secretary of State that impressed you or thinks important?
No.
Amanda, anything you'd point to say this is a good credential for?
I honestly can't say I followed along everything that was going on all that well.
I don't know. Maybe we can chalk that up to Mark Halpern's awkward interview
Yeah,
style.
it kind of reminded me. Does anybody remember that movie, Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Anyone?
Bueller, anyone? Anyway, that was only 30 seconds of that interview. 10 Iowa Democrats could not name one accomplishment from Hillary's term as Secretary of State. They did, however, emphasize that she was a strong female candidate. Chelsea,
But
your
what's
reaction?
That mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
What does that mean? What does that mean? You cannot list off an accomplishment. She has been a U.S. Senator. She's been Secretary of State. I mean, if we don't have any accomplishments, what else can the American people expect from her as President of the United States, as Commander-in-Chief? And so I hope that as this video and as this story continues to spread, for any candidate, it begins to put in the minds of Americans, hold up. Who am I voting for? What have they done? Or, you know, is this just the normal campaign rhetoric that they go about during their campaigns? And so I'm really interested to see how this evolves. And again, my thing is I'm all about the American people being educated and understanding who they're voting for and what they're voting for come November 2016.
So can you name one
Well,
accomplishment?
Chelsea, well, I agree with you here. I think this shows us how partisan the nation has become at the presidential level. People are pulling basically the lever for an R and a D. I promise you, if we sit down a whole bunch of Republicans, they can't name an accomplishment of Jeb Bush as Florida's governor or Marco Rubio as the senator. I can name accomplishments for both, but then again, I'm a political junkie.
Right.
Sadly, this is what's happening. People are voting on partisanship and emotion, and right now, all she's selling is the glass ceiling as a female president.
And that is so true,
you know,
Ford. You make a great point.
Right, and for, you know, we have a great base, we have a great following, so you and I can take that burden on to help to educate so that people are just not going all about what the letter is next to their name. We can educate people as political junkies to let them know, you know, who we believe the best candidate is going to be, who should be the next person to sit in the White House. And so I think that we have a responsibility in that, or at least I'll take that responsibility.
I agree with you, Chelsea. That is our responsibility. Unfortunately, we live in an HBO, TMZ, ESPN society. And when we start talking substance, people flip the channel. Unfortunately, you live in an infotainment society, and you have to help people
we have that thing called
through
time
talking
that's
points.
coming up. Sorry, Ford O'Connell, Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us.